Kia ora koutou, no mai, hoki mai, welcome back to UniQuest. My name is Huriwai and today we're doing General Level 2. I will leave General Level 1 down in the description down below, as well as the first level for Street and Flatland, as well as all of the beginner episodes and a playlist in the description. Today we're going to be learning riding one-footed for 2 revs, riding down 2 stair, backwards riding for 4 revs, and we'll finish it off with a still stand for 3 seconds. And before we get started, a special shout out to Carl, who corrected me in the last episode. I accidentally called something a blind free mount when in fact I should have called it a switch free mount. So thanks Carl for keeping me on my toes, I appreciate it. So there's no confusion, regular mount, switch mount, 1 foot ride for 2 revs. If you've never tried this trick before, I recommend you go back to beginner level episode 4 and learn riding 1-footer. And if you've already been practicing this trick but you're struggling, the breakthrough that I had was focusing on my speed, trying to go as fast as possible, so give that a go. All right, let's break this down. 2 revs, 1 foot ride. You can do this any way you want, but the way I learned to take my foot off is to put it out the back, just like that. Otherwise, you can put it out the front like that. 2. And you'll probably also be familiar with on the frame like this, but I don't recommend that just yet because moving your foot from the frame back down to the pedals can be a bit confusing. So for now, figure out whether you like your foot out the front or out the back. Or you can kind of like go more out the side. It's up to you. A practical tip, if you're still struggling, try putting your seat up. A lot of riders find this trick easier with a higher seat compared to a lower seat, because when your seat is really low, your knees can be a little bit too bent, a little bit too squished. So try raising it up and see if that helps. Another thing to think about is your foot placement on the pedal. You kind of want to have your toes just overhanging the pedal a little bit, but you want mostly the ball of your foot, this part of your foot, on the pedal. So that you can it's kind of like being on your tippy toes. You're a little bit more agile, a little bit more responsive, as opposed to having the pedal in the middle of your foot. And you'll probably find when you put the pedal under your heel like that, you'll have the least amount of stability. So try the ball of your foot to see if it helps you with your stability. All right, so a few things to think about when 1 foot riding. You're only going to be pedaling with 1 foot. Obviously, it's going to be doing the job that's normally done by 2 feet. So now what you're going to have to be thinking about is when to push and then when to hold the pressure. What I mean by holding the pressure is when your foot, after it pushes like this, you push, then after that point you have to hold the pressure, hold the pressure, hold the pressure, hold the pressure, and then you can push again. So like this, I push, I hold, push, hold, push, hold, push. If you want to get a feeling for what it's like to hold that pressure under your foot, grab onto your assistance, make sure your assistance is well in front of you like this. Have your dominant foot in the front and just pedal forward half a rev, take this foot off, and then still stand. Just stay in one spot and hold that pressure under this foot, just like this. Half a rev forward, then you're holding the pressure with that back foot in the back. You're not letting the unicycle go forward. There are lots of ways to practice the technique of returning your foot to the pedal, but don't worry about that yet. For now, let's just focus on getting those 2 revs, which means focusing on our momentum. So now all we're gonna focus on is removing that foot and keeping our forward momentum. A good way to tell if you're leaning forward enough, if you're maintaining your momentum properly, is if you're falling off in front of your unicycle. I'll show you. So you want to be like this, falling off in front. If you're falling off like this, obviously you're leaning back too much. Or possibly pedaling too fast. So try and find the balance in between pedaling fast and leaning forward, like always. In terms of holding that pressure with your foot at the back to stop yourself from going too fast and losing control, we'll talk more about that later. For now, just focus on going as fast as you can to get those 2 revs. And in case you were wondering, as always, unless I say otherwise, arms out for balance, don't hold onto the seat. Next up, we're riding down a 2 stair. So this is a perfect example of the kind of 2 stair that I want you to practice on. It's got plenty of run up so that you can ride to the 2 stair with a nice clear head, and there's nothing on the ground, nothing in the way, just in case we fall off when we do get to the bottom. And if this is your first time practicing riding down an obstacle, I recommend you go back to the beginner levels, study riding down a curb, master that, and then come back here. I'll leave the link down in the description below. So there's a few ways to do this. Riding fast, riding slow, riding standing up like this, bunny hopping the first stair and then riding off. Riding off and then bunny hopping. And if you've got a stair set like this, you can come at it kind of sideways to make the stairs wider. Just like this, coming at it sideways, so you can see I've got more room. If you're riding down sideways, just be careful that you don't hit your pedal into the step, like this. So there's lots of ways to ride down a two-stair, but what I want you to focus on is riding fast, keeping your ass glued to the seat, and don't hesitate. Hold on to the seat as much as you can and pull it into you. And when you ride down, I want it to be like a doo-dook, like this. Doo-dook. Nice and quick, don't hesitate. Doo-dook, doo-dook, doo-dook. If you want to, you can go slow, but then you really have to kind of consciously regain your forward momentum when you get to the bottom, and that can be difficult. And the technique for riding down a two-stair is exactly the same for a three-stair, four-stair, five-stair. So when you master this, go out, find a bigger stair set, and get it. Okay, so now 4 revs riding backwards. Riding backwards is a really difficult skill, and it's something that I didn't learn until quite a lot further down the track. There's a lot of tricks. When you do them, you're kind of passively practicing riding backwards without actually practicing it. But I want you to practice it because it is attainable at your level. The only thing that's stopping you from riding 4 revs backwards is the lack of practice. So let's get to it. So if you've been practicing backwards riding a lot and you're not getting anywhere, it's good to try a few different things. Introduce a few different ways to practice so that you're not getting so bored, so that you can keep up that motivation. So a few different ways to practice instead of just pushing off a wall. You can try from a free mount like this. You can try from idling like this, into your idle, and then into a backwards. You can practice bunny hopping backwards to get used to the feeling of leaning back. But like I said, if you're struggling, don't worry. Backwards riding is one of those things that will come passively. The more you practice a diversity of tricks, the more your general skill level is going to rise. So if you get frustrated, just try something else, take it easy on yourself, and come back to it later. The hardest thing to get over is the fear of falling over backwards. So actually practice leaning back as much as you possibly can and purposefully fall off just so you get used to the feeling, like this. And then once the fear is gone, what I want you to do is really push off of your assistance, lean back as much as you can, pedal as fast as you can, and keep going until you fall off. Don't just think about leaning back with your whole body. Try and really lean back with your shoulders like this. Kind of like this. Really leaning back with your shoulders like that. One of the breakthroughs that I had with backwards riding is this kind of alternating movement with your shoulders and your legs, just like this. Like that, 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 that. And if you're still wanting to just keep things interesting, try 1 rev, then bunny hop. 1 rev, then idle, something like that. Sometimes it's good to warm up with a little idle like this, then into it. And then if you want to, back into an idle just to save yourself, and then ride forwards. Patreon tips. If you support UniQuest on Patreon and you're paying for early access, then you'll get the chance to see an episode before it goes public and be able to give me some feedback that I can put into the episode to share with everybody else. This is from Ben Spencer on backwards riding. I was turning straight away and falling off. I guess what he means is he is turning, he's unable to stay straight. And he says he solved this by squeezing his seat with his thighs. I'm not really sure what this would do besides kind of tense you up a little bit and force you to slow down. He says I was going too fast and was out of control by leaning back too much. I solved this by barely leaning back and just pedaling backwards. I know this is contrary to your video. I find the hardest thing is getting the first rev smooth, and then it's okay once you get going. So basically what I said is to just dive into it, push off of your assistance and just see how far you can make it. For Ben, what's helping him is slowing it down a little bit, gaining a little bit more control, only leaning back slightly, not pedaling too fast so that he can make sure that first rev is nice and solid so that he can build from there. I think this method works great as well. So try this one, try the other one that I suggested, see what works for you and take it from there. Next up, 3-second still stand. All right, so now we're gonna practice still stands. What you wanna do, have your cranks parallel with the ground in that horizontal position, grab onto some assistance, and we're gonna practice letting go of the assistance, ass on the seat, sitting down. But when you let go of your assistance, you wanna move your arm so that when you're doing your corrective movements, you're not hitting into the pole like this, okay? So what I'm doing is I'm kinda really leaning over towards this pole, and then I'm gonna balance myself up like this and try and balance so that I'm now away from the pole, so when I flail my arms, I'm not gonna hit into the pole like that. So a few different ways to practice from a free mount. 1, 2, 3. Riding into the still stand, slowly, slowly, come to a stop. 1, 2, 3. And the other way to do it is to be bunny hopping on the spot like this, and then I want you to sit down and sink into that still stand. 1, 2, 3. You can practice still stands standing up like this, legs straight. But for now, I recommend sitting on the seat. I think there's more balance that way. We can worry about standing up at a later date. You probably see people like Chris Holm doing it like this in his pictures. Famous guy. Still standing, standing up is something trials riders like to do because they can kind of bunny hop like this as well. So it's pretty self-explanatory. If you're gonna fall one way, lean the opposite direction. If I'm falling to the left, then I want you to try and push your weight to the right as much as you can. It doesn't matter if you fall off. All I want you to be doing is kind of manipulating that balance, doing what you can to cause a different reaction than what would have happened if you didn't try and regain your balance. And don't be afraid to really like flail your arms like this, get really kind of violent like that, just to try and get your balance back. Don't worry about looking silly, just figure out what works and practice it. Hi-ya! A little tip, something that really helped me was practicing with something like this, a line in front of me, this straight line, so that when I'm on here, I know to kind of keep this straight line that's in front of my unicycle directly in the middle, right here. And what you want to be doing with your eyes is looking here, straight in front of your wheel, all right? And if you're looking for a little bit more of a challenge, or if you're wanting to practice still stands and really use them practically, try on an obstacle like this. It's a little bit scarier, a little bit more challenging. And when you're doing trials riding on obstacles like this, being able to still stand on them, keeping your head staying nice and calm is a really useful skill. So that's general level 2, done and dusted. If you're struggling with anything, if you want any tips, suggestions, leave it down in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you've been appreciating this video series, check us out on Patreon. We have some funding perks that may appeal to you, early access, some bonus footage, things like that. We should also have the street and flatland separate levels online available to you right now. So if you want to practice more, check them out. I'll leave the playlist down in the description below. And until next time, mā te wā.